everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Physiology and Philosophy podcast. Today, I want to talk about how you can integrate this concept of checking in into some of your morning and evening rituals. Checking in is sort of the first layer I talked about starting in the Mindfulness 101 episode, and I felt like it was an easy way to discuss it would be to go over some of the times in which you can apply some of the different practices that fall under this bucket of what I call checking in. And where I'm going to start is actually at nighttime. And then we'll go nighttime into the morning. So after a work day, after you come home and you eat, this is where I sort of begin my journaling practice. And this is one of the specific ways I touched on in the first episode about how you can sort of check in and just get a overall view on what your mental state is like. My specific practice here is I actually write down hour by hour everything that happened in that day. And then at the end of it, I will sort of review it, and I have my own 3 little notations where I have like a check mark as I'm going down, and that's just more of like a noting that I got something done that day that I needed to do. And then I'll put a smiley face next to something if it was something during that day that brought me joy and made me happy. And then I'll put like an asterisk next to something if it's something that I feel like is worth emphasizing, like that was, a big objective for the day that I got done. So I write down hour by hour, and then I notate it very briefly. And then at the bottom, I'll kind of write down if there was any pain points, if there was anything that I wasn't happy with how I performed, or if there was anything that I specifically should follow up with tomorrow. But this is where I sort of reflect on the day, and then I'll maybe make a little mental note of if I wasn't happy with how I handled something, then what are some perspectives or intentions that I can try to bring into the next day to amend that. And then afterwards, in the same journaling session, will sort of go hour by hour into the plan for what tomorrow is. And now, I like getting very detailed because I find that if I'm very clear on what I have to do, then not only does it help me get a more restful night's sleep that night, but also as you enter into the next day, I have a little less anxiety about just not knowing what I have to be doing. So it's just easier to stay focused and to be efficient. But I'll literally write down hour by hour what I have to do, and it could be as detailed as you're comfortable with going. And then when I get to the bottom here, I kind of review yesterday and today sort of side by side. And then this is where I'll just maybe take a moment and just close my eyes, and I'll say something to myself along the lines of, you did everything that you had to do today, and you have everything that you have to do tomorrow. So for tonight, let's just relax. There's no benefit. There's nothing that you need to worry about. And I feel like doing these 2 practices almost side by side, it's kind of like making peace, reflecting on the day you just had, and then also preparing for the day that you have tomorrow. So I found that really gives me the space to sort of just relax and really start to wind down and hopefully put myself in a position where I can get a restful night's sleep. And then that was the specific journaling practice, then there's sort of 2 other things that you can add on top of that. And again, with everything here, I'm going to give you all the details, but it's up to you to sort of pick and choose which of these practices you feel are appropriate to add into your own lives. Attached to that session where I'll check in and sort of say, you did the job today, you have everything planned tomorrow, you can relax. Sometimes I'll just try to sit for 5 to 10 minutes with my eyes closed. And it's more of, I'd say, an extended form of checking in. Where here I'm really just trying to breathe, really focusing on my breath sort of as intently as I can, and just feeling presence and really trying to almost just create some distance from the day-to-day. And everything that I was thinking about during that day, I really just want to try to calm everything down. And you can kind of see when you start, your thoughts are going to be really, really fast. But then by the end of it, you can get to a point where it's just okay, We have everything covered, and it's kind of if you have your own formal meditation practice, that's a good time to do it. But I don't even really consider that like an active meditation. It's more of just a sitting in existence. And then after that, I'm going to have a full episode on Stoicism. And by full episode, I mean mainly just sharing resources that have helped me. By no means am I going to try to sit here and lecture anyone on the ins and outs of Stoicism, but this is also where I will introduce or read a passage from the Daily Stoic. It's a book by Ryan Holiday, and I highly recommend. I think it's outside of meditating, it's probably the most impactful resource that has had a benefit on my mental health and anxiety. And it's essentially every single day of the year has its own passage, and he's essentially taken an excerpt from varying Stoics, and then you read the excerpt, and then it's sort of his interpretation on how to apply it to the modern world. And it takes 3 minutes maximum, but to me it's just such a quick fix to apply just some concepts that help me lower my anxiety and feel more focused and just adjust my perspective a little bit. So those are the specific, I'd say, evening rituals or practices that you can do that fall under this bucket of checking in. And then after that, if we're talking about the integration of these practices into just overall well-being and health, obviously I think there's some things you can do to try to ensure that you get a good night's sleep. And these are things that people have talked about ad nauseum, but very simple things like during the day, try not to have caffeine past 2 or 3 p.m. And then once you're home, try to dim the lights if you can. I like to reduce screen time 2 to 3 hours before bed. And if you're going to be on it, use night mode. I try not to really watch TV on the weeknights, and I'll try to read. Cool the temperature of your house, and then when it comes time to actual sleeping, try to get as cold as you can in as dark of a room as you can. And those are some of and I also started to mouth tape about 6 months ago, and that's had a big impact on my quality of sleep and ultimately quality of life because of that. So those are some of the things that I'll try to do once I get home and it's time to wind down, to ensure that I get a good night's sleep, because for me that's been one of the things that has become increasingly clear over the past 3 to 5 years as I'm venturing into my late 20s and not my early 20s anymore, is getting high quality sleep. It not only impacts you physically but mentally as well. So I've done everything I can to do that. I think it's just a shift in mindset where it used to be, what are nootropics or any smart drugs or any, smart coffees I can take that will help me feel the most focused throughout the day. And now it's completely shift into what can I do to get a better night's sleep at nighttime, because that's where I feel like I'm the best version of myself. But anyway, now the morning rituals are how you can check in the morning. Similarly, integrating it to sort of this holistic well-being, I think first thing I try to do in the morning is wake up, go outside, get sunlight, and go for a walk. And this does sort of 3 things at once if we're talking about efficiency for your physical and mental health. One, when you just wake up and you start moving, it's obviously a great way to start the day. And I'm sure if you're listening to me, you probably know who Andrew Huberman is. And he's sort of, I think, sparked this craze of everyone just going out and getting sunlight in the morning. And that's really where I sort of started to adopt the practice. But if you want to hear more on the mechanisms of how this actually does impact your circadian rhythm, I think he has probably over a dozen episodes where he outlines this. But just very broadly, if you go out and you can get 5 to 10 minutes of sunlight in the morning, it helps you feel more energized in the morning, and it also helps set your sleep-wake cycle so when it's time to go to bed in the following evening, you can feel more relaxed, and it's easier for you to sort of go back into that transition phase. So wake up, go out and get sunlight, move a little bit, and walk. And in this walk, it can be 5 to 10 minutes. This is where I'll do another check-in. And I think there's almost something as simple as walking. I sort of see three different tiers of checking in. And in the morning one, this is one of the more short ones, but this is where I'll check in. Similar at night, I'll say, how am I feeling? And then if you can feel in the morning that something is off, then this is a great time to sort of try to interject before your day gets started. And you can say, hey, what's going on here? I know that's something that's worrying me, but I have a plan. I'm going to try my best. No matter what, I'm going to be okay. Let's just try to approach this with a calm, optimistic mindset, and let's just try to start the day on the right foot. But it's mainly just checking in with, that's sort of my internal dialogue. But whatever it is for you, if you have a big meeting that day, it's just sort of letting yourself know that you're prepared, or if you have a difficult conversation that you have to have. This is just an opportunity for me to kind of, again, check in, see how things are going, and just, interject in the event that you have an unsteady mind in the morning. And then after this morning walk is where I will sort of do that perspective pyramid that I outlined in the previous episode here. And then when it's time to actually start your day, you've got your sunlight, you've got your movement, you've set your intentions, and you're ready to go. Here is where I'll also try to, after the walk, actually do a workout. And everyone has their own fitness routines. In a future episode, I'll try to maybe provide some recommendations on how to decide what types of workouts may be best for you, how often you should do them, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, I like to work out for two reasons. One, it's if I'm working that day and I have to do a workout at night, I'm going to be thinking about it and I'm going to want to do it less. So for me, it's just easiest to get it done in the morning, and then I typically feel pretty good after. But honestly, one of the main things that this does for me is it delays the time of which I have my first cup of coffee. So now if I do a workout for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, and I've already walked and I've woke up and I've sat, now it's 9 a.m. and I've been up for 2 to 3 hours at this point, and now I can have my coffee. And delaying caffeine for ideally 60 to 90 minutes from when you wake up has had a very big impact on me. And I don't know the mechanisms as detailed as other people do, but my current understanding of what this does is when you wake up, your cortisol levels, you want them to sort of go through their own natural cycle. And if you have caffeine very early, within the first 20 minutes of waking, you sort of interject in this natural process, and then you're going to be more tired throughout the day. So I found a lot of benefit from it. And now if you just think about where you're going to be at, it's you woke up, you've walked, you've moved, you got sunlight, you set your intentions, you worked out, had your caffeine, have a high protein meal after that, and you're in a pretty good position to have a good day. And this is where I like to come back and say, no matter what happens during that day, even if it's a bad day, when you come home and you reflect on the day after that, when you write down, hey, woke up, moved, got sunlight, set my intentions, worked out, enjoyed my cup of coffee, that's stuff that no one can take away from you. And that's stuff that you have control over, and you're directly taking care of your own health, and that you should feel good in taking those steps. And even if some of the external factors that are outside of your control didn't go that way, you did what you needed to do to put yourself in a good position, and that's going to pay off in the long run. So again, I don't work out every day. I try to go out and get sunlight every day, or at least do some form of movement. But the main purpose of this episode was not necessarily to go over morning and evening rituals, but to really detail some specific ways in which how you can apply this checking in. And when I said there was 3 tiers of what I call walking check-ins, the morning one is usually a short one, unless it's on the weekend, but that's sort of a before work one. And I think there's also ways you can integrate these mid-afternoon walks as well, as kind of just like a after you eat lunch, just walk around, move a little bit, check in, see like, hey, like, am I in a bad mood? Did I just snap on a coworker, or did something bad just happen here? And then again, it's just one more opportunity to check in, adjust your perspective, and try to just sort of take a brief pause. And then the types of walking that I'll call tier 3 that I tend to enjoy the most are these longer, uninterrupted walks, typically on the weekends, or if you have time during the week, then that's even better. But these are ones where I'll try to do some more like meta thinking, where I'm like, hey, like, how are things going? Am I happy with where things are at? And this is where I'll try to think about maybe some more stuff in the long term. I'm like, is there anything that's been bugging me that I want to try to put a plan in place so I'm in a different position in a month from now? And then you can also just take this as an opportunity to either plan and sort of check in and make sure everything's okay, but also really just sink into like the presence of, hey, like, everything's really good and I'm alive. And even though this week was tough, I'm surrounded by people who I love, and I have my health, and my family has my health, and I'm just really happy to be here. And just taking the time to give yourself that space to realize just on that global scale of how good things actually are is, I find it really enjoyable. And then I think in a future episode we can talk about imagery or fantasizing. But I think that's something that I used to do in the past, where I would take these long walks and I would sort of envision some of these very big things that I wanted to happen in my life. And so on these longer walks, I would listen to music, and it would kind of be like playing this own movie in your head. And I think it's important for some things. If there's something that you want, I think visualizing it can sort of help you come up with a plan for how to get there. But what it does on the downside is, I think it does two things. One, it takes you out of the moment, where it's making you think like, oh, I'll be happy when I get there. And to me, that's not the goal. Is you want to try to find peace in the moment. And it also can sometimes create an expectation for what it's going to be like when you do achieve X. And sometimes that's not the best thing. I'll give you one quick example. When I was in undergrad, for 4 years, I wanted to present at this national conference and win this Researcher of the Year award. And I would go on these walks and I would visualize it and I would listen to music. And when I was visualizing it, they were announcing my name and I was walking up to this podium and I was getting all this external gratification from everyone. And 4 years later, I actually won the award, but someone just tapped me on the shoulder like, hey, are you Jake? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, congrats, you won the award. And then they walked away. And it kind of ruined the moment for me, because it shouldn't have ever been about what other people were going to think, or the gratification or the recognition from other people. It should have been more internal the whole time, that I was capable of getting there and doing work that was of high quality, and that should have been what it was all about. But I remember walking back and I was obviously happy, but it didn't meet my expectations. So I think you just have to be careful and try to keep things more internal as opposed to external. So my advisor, and I know it's a common practice, but it's things that are going to affect your happiness. You want to be, you don't want it to be, external gratification. You want it to be more process oriented. And that's where I try to shift things now with all these routines, where it's like, hey, like, if I tried my best today, if I worked hard, and if I treated other people well, those are the three things that it takes to have a good day. That's what makes me happy. It's not about the actual publication or the positive feedback from a superior. That stuff's all great, and that'll come in time. But I think if you can shift it more towards these process-oriented outcomes, then I think that is a cleaner fuel for your mental fire. Kind of went on a little tangent there, but overall, I just wanted to let you guys know how you can apply some of these different checking in practices to an evening and a morning ritual. And as always, apply to your circumstances, see what works for you, throw out what doesn't, and let me know. Either shoot me a message or a comment if any of these practices work for you, or if you have one that I didn't mention and that has worked for you, then I'd love to hear about it and maybe share it in a future episode. Until then, I hope you all have a great evening, afternoon, morning, or good night, and I will be back soon.